now. Sarah, welcome. Hey. Thanks so much for joining us here at PitchCon.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. Sorry, I'm making sure I'm sharing my screen correctly. So sorry it's taking me a moment.
No, take your time. It's fine. All right. So if you don't know Sarah, Sarah is currently a reporter and researcher over at MLB.com and has contributed plenty to BaseballSavant and the StatCast team. She's also worked for ESPN, CSN Chicago, SNY TV, and the Mets blog. You can find her on Twitter at Slangs on Sports. And of course, you can listen to her on the On the Corner podcast about a month ago. Fantastic episode. We were so lucky to have you on. But anyway, Sarah, I'm going to let you take it away here. And thanks again for being a part of PitchCon.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. So hopefully I'm going to be sharing you guys my screen. Hopefully you see it right now. I was just thinking that I would walk everybody through some different things that I do when I'm researching. You know, I think that a lot of times I'll answer questions on Twitter or in a research inbox on MLB.com or any other way, and I give you the answer, but I'm not sure that everybody knows exactly how we got to the answer. So I was thinking that we could show a little bit of how we get there. I'm going to show you some things on BaseballSavant, which is completely free to use and available to you. And I'm also going to show you some stuff on Baseball Reference, which I believe is free right now, actually, as they do their transition to the StatHead site. I think I'm going to be showing you on Baseball Reference, but they have the same play index features on the StatHead site as well. So, you know, you can do them there as well. Maybe we'll even do that. But here's the list of questions. And I also wanted to say from the beginning that if anyone has any other questions, research questions you want to know how to do, anything else along these lines, you can put them in the Periscope questions thing or comments thing, or on Twitch, or you can tweet them at me during this. And if I see it, I'll definitely see what we can do about answering it in the moment. So just to show you exactly how that all goes, as if it were really during a live game or something else like that. So we're going to start up here with this first question, which was, who was the last player to have more home runs than strikeouts in a season? So somebody actually asked me this one on Twitter a couple of weeks ago, and I recorded a video and did the answer in there. But we're going to pretend you haven't seen that answer, and we're going to go through it. So I'm going to switch windows, and I hope that you're going to see my other window, but you're not. All right, so we're going to do it here. So go to Baseball Reference, and sorry, logged in another site, but you can't see that. So I see this question, and I know that this is a Baseball Reference question. So that would be one thing that is really important to researching, knowing anything in general, is sort of knowing what your best tool is for any type of question. And when I see a historical question like this one about a player to have more home runs than strikeouts in a season, I'm going to know immediately that my best place to do that would be Baseball Reference. So we're going to come over here, and if you aren't familiar with the play index, it's a great tool to familiarize yourself with. There is so much in here. We're not even going to get into, you know, the half of it or anything even close to that. So I definitely recommend taking a look through it and their new site, StatHead. You have time to do that right now, and, you know, just get yourself really ready for whenever we do get baseball games back. So there are these different kinds of finders here. There's season finders, and there's game finders. Then we can look through splits and event. So with a question like this, the last player to have more home runs and strikeouts in a season, this in a season part is going to tip me off that, okay, I'm going to want the season finder here. I'm not going to want to break this down by individual games. We're not talking about a player just having more home runs than strikeouts in a game. We're talking about over a season in their career. So we'll come over here to the player batting season finder and click that. Now there's a lot of stuff in here, but my goal here today with showing everybody what I do and how I do it is a little bit more showing by example than going through everything. I mean, we could go through everything on here, and that's something I've done with some of my MLB.com colleagues in the off season. It takes a long time to go through everything. So we're not going to do that right now, but we are going to come over here. We're going to want single season totals because we're not talking about over a 2-year span. We're not talking about over an entire career. We're just talking about in a season. So we're going to come here, and the next thing that I'm going to do with this question, and this is something that you sort of pick up more of as you research more and deal more with stats, is that you need a minimum sometimes, right? So if we did this with just players to have more home runs and strikeouts in a season, we could find a pitcher who was an American League pitcher who hit a home run in interleague and managed not to strike out in any of his other, 4 at-bats that season. That's probably not what we're talking about here. That's not really the question we're seeking to answer. We're looking for an actual player, position player. So in order to do that, what I'm going to do is set a minimum of 10 home runs. So we're going to come over here to this additional criteria, and we're going to scroll to home runs and do greater than equal to 10. So by doing that, already we're telling this entire huge database with all of this information in it to only give me seasons where this player hit at least 10 home runs. So that's our first step. Now, the next thing that we're going to do is to deal with this more home runs than strikeouts part. So this is one of my favorite features, I think, in the season finder. I just think it's really cool, and it gives us the ability to answer a lot of really cool questions. So there's this little part here where you get a math problem, more so than just, okay, greater than or equal to 10 with a number, but you can actually do how one stat relates to another. So we can come over here and we can say, we want home runs greater than strikeouts. So the 1.0 is just greater than, we're just saying normal greater than. We could do a fraction or something if we wanted half or 1.5 or something like that, but this is pretty simple. So what we're telling Baseball Reference to do, and you see it up here, is to go to every season, find every guy with at least 10 home runs, and then from those, find guys who had more home runs than strikeouts. And it actually does a greater than or equal. I know it's not showing it on the side here, but it always searches greater than or equal. So if we have to eyeball a couple, obviously we'll do that. Now, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to change this sort by. So if we did this as is, it would give us however many seasons are the answer in order of the home runs that they hit in that season. But in general, with something like this, I'm a little more interested in, okay, when is the last time this happened? So I would much rather see this in order of year. So I'm going to change this to year, and we're ready to go. So we'll press get results. And we will find out that the last player to do this was Barry Bonds in 2004. And it even puts the stats that you put in your equation right over here. Normally they would be over here, right? But it moves them so that you can see exactly what you're looking at. So he had 45 home runs and 41 strikeouts, which is pretty cool. And then before that, we have to go all the way back to George Brett with 24 home runs in 1980 and 22 strikeouts. And then before that, I mean, you could easily say, and I think when I answered this question, I did. I said in the divisional era, you could say in the expansion era, either of those are in the 60s. You can see that this was a little more common prior to that. But these are also mostly lower home run totals, although not here. But for the most part, you see that. And we can also scroll all the way down if we're curious the first time it happened in this database, obviously. And here's Cap Anson, who is someone I figured would be on this list in the pre-modern era before 1900. So that's one way to answer one question that I thought was a pretty fun one and showed just really, I think that a lot of people might know Baseball Reference and know how to find most home runs in a season or most strikeouts in a season, but it's really cool to see just how many different things you can do with this, even within the constructs of a season finder. So that's the first one. I hope that made sense. I hope that was fun. I hope it was cool. I'm curious if anyone knew it was Barry Bonds or, could have made that guess in your head. It's home runs. He's a pretty good guess just overall. And when he spends this much time being walked, then you can see that there's not quite as much time to strike out. So makes sense. Here's another one that's going to involve kind of a fun equation. So someone asked, do any pitchers have the same career ERA and FIP? So FIP, obviously fielding independent pitching. We're looking at, a player's ability to prevent runs and taking defense out of the equation. So typically, we're going to see differences, small or large, between a pitcher's ERA and his FIP. In general, we might use it as a way to say, okay, is he getting lucky? Is he getting a lot of help from his defense? Is he getting hurt by his defense? But this is an interesting question of what about have they ever aligned? So I'm going to come back to the play index. Again, this is a career-long and historical thing, so I know that I'm going to want to go from Baseball Reference. There are obviously other places you can find ERA and FIP, but this is where I'm going to be able to run the query the most easily. So I'll come over here, and we're again going to go to this season finder, but we're not going to do batting. We're going to do player pitching. And this is where there's a certain caveat that comes in, which is that earned runs have only been official in both the American League and the National League since 1913. So I don't want to deal with someone's ERA that was before that. They do exist. You see them on players' pages. You know, it's the same with the RBI thing that I'm sure you heard about last year when Albert Pujols was moving up the list. Those have only been official since 1920. People have all different opinions on that, but it's the fact, and I'm going to follow the rules. So we're going to start with 1913. Even if someone's ERA would come up in 1910, we're not going to consider that. The next thing that I want to do here is, again, set a minimum. So instead of setting it with something over here, there are certain sort of default minimums, like qualified for the ERA title or a certain number of innings pitched or games pitched, that reference is just going to give you an easy click to fill out. So obviously qualified for the ERA title isn't going to make a whole lot of sense for a player's career. So I'm going to choose innings pitched. I'm going to go with 1,000 because that sounds like, you know, at least a decent career. You've got something there. And then the other thing we have to do is up here, it's currently set to single season totals. That's the default. That's what we use for the Barry Bonds for the more home runs and strikeouts. But we're talking about a career. So we're going to come here instead to find totals for combined seasons or careers. And I will say, and I didn't say this on batting, but reference Sean Foreman and everyone there have done a really great job with giving you examples. So hopefully it's helpful to hear them from me, but you can also see them right here, like what I'm highlighting, giving you an example of what you would be searching for if you clicked this button. So that's helpful too. So this allows you to do any span of time or a player's entire career if you just leave it as is. So we're doing careers. And the next thing that we need is to come back again to our little equals math problem here that allows you to do two stats. So we want ERA equal to FIP. And again, I'm going to sort by years or name, you know, just for something like this. If we are going to get any results, sorting it by strikeouts isn't really going to help me. That's not what I'm talking about. So I'll press get results. And we will find that there are a handful of pitchers here, but I didn't click innings pitched. There we go. I was going to say I knew the answer, and that wasn't it. All right, here we go. I filled out the 1,000. I didn't click innings pitched, so here we go. So the answer is that there's none, and I think I even pushed it down to like 500 innings, and you saw those three guys that did come up with no minimum, and they all had, I think, under 70 innings pitched. So the answer is that there's no pitcher to really have any substantial career to do this. But then when I got this question, I was curious, well, okay, what about in a season? So we're going to change this slightly. I changed it back to single season totals because instead of looking for careers, I'm just curious, okay, did anyone do this last year? So let's take a look. We're not going to want our innings pitched of 1,000. No one threw 1,000 innings last year. And here we would use the qualified for ERA title because, yeah, we want a qualified starter from last season. So we'll do the same thing. ERA is already equal to FIP. We have that. We have any year. And then we're going to sort it. It's already sorted by year, so we're going to stick with that. So we see any answers from last year first. And we are going to get the answer that Madison Bumgarner did this. So he had a 3.90 ERA and a 3.90 FIP. And there's a lot of ways you can interpret that, but certainly seems to tell you that, you know, the defense wasn't hurting or particularly helping him. And sort of what you see is what you get. So whatever you Diamondbacks fans want to think about that heading into Madison Bumgarner now being on your team. But I thought this was a fun list. It's not the type of stat that really necessarily tells you a whole lot. It's just one of those fun stats things, you know. And I think those are fun too. You know, we're not necessarily using this to analyze anything. We're just saying, hey, look, Madison Bumgarner had the same ERA and FIP last year. Aaron Herring did in 2014. And hey, another Giant. Here's Tim Lincecum. And, you know, this is pretty cool. I mean, when you're getting into some low ERAs, like Lincecum in 08 and Clemens in 1998, then it's pretty interesting. We're talking in the 390s, maybe not quite as illustrative of anything really. But yeah, I hope that that's also makes sense and is fun to see. All right, we're going to move right along. So this was something, I think someone asked me, like, the Rockies club record for ERA. And I totally get that being a question. You know, we know that they play at Coors and ERAs, low ERAs are not easy to come by. But given that, I thought it would be really interesting to look at home ERA because what we have seen derail so many Rockies pitchers over the years is having to make those home starts. So this is another baseball reference question. Again, it's historical. It's not something that we're only going to want in the StatCast era. So we're going to go to baseball reference again. So we're going to come back to the play index. And this time, we do want something that happened in a season. But if you noticed on the season finder, in fact, I'll pull it back up so you can see, we don't have venues, right? So if you are familiar with a splits page, you know that there are a whole lot of different things that you get split stats by. You get home and away, you get by inning, you get by time through the order, for pitchers, you get first half and second half, but I don't see any of those things here. So that's a hint that this isn't where it's going to be. So we're going to go to the play index, and we're going to look at these other kinds of finders. And I mentioned this one before, the split finder. So the split finder, what it does, and obviously they're telling you right here, the split finder takes everything you would find on a player splits page. In fact, I'll pull one up so you can see it. So here is Madison Bumgarner splits page from 2019. And you can see just all the different things that you can take those stats and split them by. So we have, this is a good summary, but we have first or second half, we have pitching role to pitch and relief, was that part of it? Opposition defensive position, facing different players, what the count was, stuff about run support, what month it was in, how much rest they had, which catcher they were throwing to, what ballpark they were in. So obviously there's a lot of examples and a lot of different things that you can choose from here. So what the split finder does is it takes all of those things, all of this and everything that you see on this page, and it makes it searchable. So you can specifically pull out a player's season stats in one of those split instances. So we're going to go to the player pitching split finder because we're looking for Rockies home ERA, just as a reminder. First thing I'm going to do, just first thing I see, I'm going to change this to Rockies. We're only talking about Rockies players. So right now we have individual seasons, Rockies pitchers. We're getting there. Next thing we're going to do is this choose split type. So it's sort of hidden just on the left-hand side over here, but this is the key. This is what allows you to search by all of those different splits. And here you go. These are all of those same categories that you saw at the top of the player's split page. So what we want is home or away. And then if you leave it as match any listed, it'll basically bring you either split. It'll just go through everything. But we don't want that. We don't care about road ERA in this case. We want home ERA. So we'll select that. And then we're also going to want to put a minimum again, because otherwise there could be someone who made one start and managed not to allow a run, or anything else, made 2 starts, only allowed 1 run, something like that. So we're going to head over to this additional criteria again, and we're going to go, I don't want relievers. So we're going to go games started, and I'm just going to do 10. That would not even be necessarily a full season for a guy, but it's just close to it. And, maybe weird scheduling, whatever else. 10 starts at home seems like a pretty good sample size to have. Now we're going to go to the sort by, and we want to sort by ERA, but the default, as it tells you, is descending. I'm curious, and we might run it after because I'm curious what the worst home ERA by a Rockies pitcher is. But to answer the question, we're going to start with ascending. So we want the smallest number first. And we're going to get results. We have Rockies, home, 10 starts at home, sorted by ascending. I'm not sure why it says greatest. And our answer is going to be Kyle Freeland in 2018, before his 2019 season happened, 2.40, which is a pretty good ERA to have at Coors Field. Definitely impressive. You can see that he's one of only 2 guys in the franchise's history to have an ERA below 3 there. And another thing to note, and actually I'll go back and do this, is these are only Rockies pitchers, right? So we did Rockies and we did at home. But if you were curious about just like the lowest single season ERA at Coors Field, and we're not only looking at home pitchers, maybe someone like Kershaw managed to make 3 or 4 starts there in a year, and you're curious if he would rank, we can do that too. So we're going to do that now because I'm curious about that one. So we're going to get rid of the player team because now it doesn't matter. I'm going to do any team. Then we're going to do a different split. So instead of home or away, we want to do by ballpark. So there's ballparks all the way at the bottom here, and we're just going to do Coors. So sorry about those first few seasons. And here we go, Colorado, Coors Field. And then we can't have our 10-game start qualifier because then it will only be Rockies pitchers. So I'm going to do 3 and see, because I think that you could realistically have an NL West pitcher, end up with 3 starts, and maybe they're all good there. So now we have starts at Coors Field, at least 3 starts there, and we have ascending ERA. And our answer is going to be, and I don't know the answer to this one. And it's still a Rockies pitcher, but he just didn't make 10 starts. All right, so but this one looks like this would be a road. I don't think he was. Let's find out. So we know that Kenta Maeda was on the Dodgers. I don't know who Clay Hensley was on in 2006. I do remember one time a grasshopper landed on him during a game. Yes, he was on the Padres. Okay, so these 2 are our answers for road pitchers at Coors Field. So a little bit better than Kyle Freeland, but also makes Freeland's 2.40 being sustained over more starts than that, I think, even more impressive. So just another thing you can do with this. Again, there are a million things we can do with this. And with that in mind, I am curious about the worst ERA by a Rockies pitcher at Coors in a season. So we're going to do that as well at home. So we're going back here. We're going back to the 10 starts because we're talking about Rockies pitchers. And we're going to go back to the home or away just in case. Home. And we're not going to do ascending order. So now we have Rockies pitchers at home, 10 starts. There we go. And the answer is going to be also Kyle Freeland the next year. And you know what? If I thought about that, I think I would have gotten that. Maybe. Anyway, so we've got 2 pitchers with ERAs above 7.75. And they're both in the 9s. Brian Bohannon did not enjoy the 2001 season, it doesn't look like, with a 9 even ERA. And Kyle Freeland last year, and we all know what happened from his 2018 to his 2019, had a 9.25 ERA at home the year after setting a record for the home ERA. So, baseball's a very, very difficult game. But yeah, hopefully that's fun. Hopefully you're learning stuff. I hope you are. This is fun for me. So someone else asked me, who has the most strikeouts of Tony Gwynn over his career? So we're going to go to Tony Gwynn's page. And this one isn't really a search, but it's another thing that maybe you're not familiar with. Maybe you don't know it's there. So we're going to go to Tony Gwynn's page. And the player pages actually have a lot more than just all of the stats on the front page, which obviously you can click, you can sum them, you can do all of that. But there's even more going on here than just this and the value and everything else. So if you hover over this Finders and Advanced Stats, you also have Verse Pitcher. So we can see what Tony Gwynn did against every pitcher he faced. One important thing to note, if you're really doing serious research or doing it for work or anything, is this does automatically include postseason. Typically with baseball stats, postseason isn't included. It would only include it if you said including postseason, but for this, we'll leave it just to have, more results and whatever else. It's pretty cool because you can look against Hall of Famers, which was a fun one for Mariano Rivera, because you could look, I remember looking at what he did against current Hall of Famers, and then it actually changed when he went in with Edgar, because Edgar was pretty good against him. So fun things. But it's going to automatically sort by plate appearances. So you're going to see that Tony Gwynn faced Greg Maddux more than anyone else in his career, and then Tom Glavine next. But we can also sort it by other things. So if we sort it by strikeouts, we're going to see that Nolan Ryan had 9 strikeouts of Tony Gwynn, which is the most times that Tony Gwynn struck out against any pitcher, which is pretty good, only 9 times in a very long career. If we click on Nolan Ryan's name, we'll actually get the play-by-play info for all of these plate appearances. So you can see exactly what happened, each individual game, how many times makes sense. He faced him 3 or 4 times in most of these. Obviously, Nolan Ryan went deep into games. And you can see it'll note postseason if there were any postseason ones. This one doesn't have any. But yeah, and it's pretty helpful. You can click over to the game. You can grab whatever else. You can see that his 67 plate appearances span from 1982 to 1988. At the top, it even gives you the specifics of each individual season that he did face him. So I think those things are often a little bit of a hidden gem these player page advanced stats and finders. So that's something that you can check out, and you can check any, the same for any pitcher. So if we wanted to see who Nolan Ryan struck out most in his career, so we know that Tony Gwynn struck out the most against him, but is that the batter that he struck out the most? We can do the same. You go to pitching and verse batter, which is in the exact same place as it is on a hitter. And you sort by strikeouts, and you will find out there's a lot of batters in here. Not a surprise. You will find out that he struck out Claudell Washington 39 times, and that was the most. Rod Carew here with 29. It's a fun list, fun to look through. And you can see, if you wanted to see all 102 plate appearances here, you could do that. And if you did want to use this as a search, like best batting average against Nolan Ryan, minimum, let's see, minimum 40 plate appearances against him, you could do that right here. Plate appearances greater than or equal to 40. And now it's going to take off everybody with 39 or fewer plate appearances and give you a lot less data, although still a lot. And we could sort by batting average here. We'd find out that it's Dick Allen. And there you go. If you wanted to do by slugging percentage, same thing. And anything else. So obviously, if you're looking for a rate stat, you're going to need a minimum that already kind of came up. And so, yeah, I mean, Carlos Strumsky, that's pretty good. So makes sense. Hall of Famer. Yeah, so that's another thing. And I'm going to move into some of the Baseball Savant questions. So the first one I have is pretty simple, but I feel like we talk about hard hit home runs a lot on Twitter, on TV, on wherever, and I'm not sure that everyone knows just how to find that leaderboard. So not for the highest exit velocity, which is a leaderboard on the Baseball Savant site, but for the hardest hit home run in the majors last year. So we're going to go to Baseball Savant. And we're going to go to, by the way, this has like a new homepage as of this offseason, as of like 2 months ago-ish, and it's very nice. So just letting you know that if you didn't know that. We've got the search page right up here. So we'll click to that. And this is the Baseball Savant version of that play index in a lot of ways, right? This allows you to query anything in the database. And this is so powerful. And there are so many different splits and different things that you can select, and certainly don't have time to go through all of that. But I definitely encourage anyone who is interested in these kind of stats in StatCast, maybe you use those stats, but you don't know so much how to find them, play around with this because there's so much. And it's really great. So the first thing we're going to do is the Baseball Savant search defaults to pitching search. And the way that you change it, the same way we would select batting season finder or pitching season finder, is over here by player type. So that's telling you whose stats do you want. Do you want a pitcher's stats? Do you want a certain fielder's stats? Or do you want a batter's stats? So in this case, we want a batter because we want to know who hit the hardest hit home run in the majors last year. The next thing we're going to do is go to PA result, plate appearance result. We're going to select home run. So now we're looking for batters. We're looking for home runs. Okay, we're partway there. We're in 2019. We're in the regular season. We can put the postseason in there just for fun if we want to. Again, typically stats are regular season. The most important part, one of the most important parts of the Savant search is this group by over here. So this is going to determine what your results look like. Are you going to get a bunch of players and a count of how many times they've done a thing? Are you going to get individual events for them? Are you going to get individual game performances for them? Are you going to get the whole league? Or are you going to get a team? So this is where you make that determination. So for something like the hardest hit home run in the majors, that's an event level thing. There's one. Maybe there are two tied. I don't know. I do know. But maybe there are two tied, whatever else it is, but you want a discrete event. So we're going to go to player and event. And you'll see, so if you watch this sort by, the default when you're on player name is pitches. So if you sorted this, you would get a list of the players with the most home runs last year because it would go through, and every time they hit a pitch that was a home run, ending the plate appearance, then they would get a 1, 2, 3, and so on, and it would count that up. But we want the event. So when you go to event, pitches isn't an option anymore, right? Because an event happens on one singular pitch. So you're not going to be able to count pitches for anything. And the default will actually be exit velocity, which is what we want here. But there are a lot of other things too. Distance projected is probably the second most likely thing you would look at, and we can look at that next. So as is, We have batters, home runs, 2019 in the regular season and the playoffs. We have events, so we have singular home runs, and we have them sorted by exit velocity. So we're going to search that. And there's a lot here. And we're going to get this Gary Sanchez home run and this Pete Alonso home run, which are tied as far as we can see, and Aristides Aquino, at 118.3. So those are the 3 hardest hit home runs in the majors last year, all tied with each other, all at different times. And if we wanted more information on them, we could click on them. Now, it's loading a lot of information. I could have set a minimum of like at least 110 miles an hour, so it would be grabbing less data, but I didn't do that. But if you click on it, you will get more information about the play, who was on base, anything else like that, and it should have a link to a video. So that's how you would find just the hardest hit home run in the majors last year. Now, if you wanted to do the same for the longest home run in the majors last year, we would do the same thing. It's still loading because I gave it so much data, which wasn't very nice of me. So I'm going to open up a new search tab. And now we're going to look for the longest home run. So same thing. We're going to start by changing to batter because we want to know who hit it, not who gave it up. We're going to home run. We're going to change to event again. And then we're going to change to distance projected. So instead of giving us sorting it by exit velocity, we're going to do by distance projected. And I am going to set a minimum here so it isn't quite so much information, so it doesn't take so long to load. And what we're going to do, and this is a good way to learn this part too. So this metric range allows you to set certain kinds of minimums. There's other places we set minimums here too, which we'll get to in a moment. But this is one way. So distance projected, and we're going to say greater than or equal to like 450 feet, because we know there were a bunch at least longer than that last year. And then it won't be pulling quite so many. So we're searching for all home runs, 2019, regular season and postseason, sure. At least 450 feet, and then we're sorting them by distance. So we'll open that up, and we'll see Nomar Mazara. So one of the great improvements that Darren Woolman, who runs all of this and designs all of it and is why it looks so nice, which is great, did in the offseason was that he added these extra stats. So it used to be if you search this, all you would get was the distance. But now you can get exit velocity as well, and you can actually control it to get something else if you wanted. So if you wanted to see the launch angle on each of these just in your search page, you could select this and then search it again. So that's a new feature, which is really helpful. Especially if you're looking at combinations of 2 things. So you'll see that Nomar Mazara hit this 500-foot home run, 505, excuse me. Rangel Ravelo, Ian Desmond, Ketel Marte, Nomar Mazara again, Miguel Sano, Nolan Arenado, and so on. So these are your longest home runs of last year. And you'll see that since I did that 450, it's still a lot of home runs, but you'll see that it cuts off at 450. So we don't have a 449 one here. So instead we have only 185 home runs, which is not quite so many as the more than 6,000 that were hit last year. This finally loaded, so I can show you that if you click on Gary Sanchez, you get more information. So you get some of those other stats that I was showing you in the included stats, and then it has a link to a video. If you wanted to see who allowed these home runs, you could do this very easily by just changing this to pitcher and running it again. You'll see the same distances and they'll be in the same order, but they'll be sorted. They'll have the pitcher's names instead. So Reynaldo Lopez allowed that 505-foot home run. Then we have Tim Melville, Mike Montgomery, Steven Matz, and Mimo again. So that's 2 different types of searches you can do with BaseballSavant. We already did this. So here's another thing. So I was talking about how you can search it with by pitches. So it'll count up whatever you're looking for, however many times it happened. So that's how we would answer this one, which is the most 110-mile-an-hour home runs in 2019. So I'm going to open up a new search page. Mike Petriello, who is like one of our StatCast absolute geniuses, told me at one point when we were talking about StatCast, I don't even remember when it was, whenever you're doing a new search, always open up a new page, because there's so many different filters that you could accidentally have something clicked and totally screw up what you're looking for. So I definitely abide by that. That's why I keep opening new ones. Okay, so we're looking for 110 mile an hour home runs from last year. So we're going to select home run again, 2019. Now we're going to use this metric range again, but we're not going to use it for distance the way we did before. We're going to use it for exit velocity. So we're going to come here. We're going to scroll to 110. So now what we're saying is go find me all the home runs batters hit last year with an exit velocity of at least 110 miles an hour. And in this case, it's going to look for 110.0 up. So like if it's 109.9, we're not rounding that in the case of this search. Some people might care about that. So we're not even going to change the group by or the sort by here. We're just going to leave it as player name and pitches because it's not going to show us how many pitches. It's going to show us how many pitches that qualify for all of this that they had. In other words, how many home runs. So if we run this, we'll see. Again, it was the two New Yorkers. It was Pete and Gary Sanchez, tied with 19 110 mile an hour home runs each. Jorge Soler and Mike Trout, AL leader and second, had 17. Harper, and you only have a handful of guys. You only have 8 guys with at least 10 of these home runs. Ronald Acuna Jr., that power, that's fun. Josh Bell, we remember how much fun he was to watch last year. And Springer, who knows, he could have been higher up if not for missing some time with injury. So that's another way you can use the Savant search. So you don't have to search only on the event level. You can also be searching for a season amount of something. All right, I'm not sure. This one is going to take a little bit longer. I'm not sure if we have enough time for that. But let's go to this one for now. So we haven't done a whole lot of pitching stuff. So we're going to do a pitching search for the most strikeouts on in-zone pitches last year. So I'm going to go over here, open up a new search page again. And we're going to leave it at pitcher this time. We're going to go to plate appearance result. And here's where something gets just, easy thing to remember once you know it, but you just need to know it. So if we just select strikeout, this won't include a strike him out, throw him out, double play, or something like that. So whenever you're searching for strikeouts on Savant, you always want to select both of these just because you want to have every single strikeout. It's just one of those things. You do it, you get used to it, and you do it all the time. So we're going to select both things for strikeout because we want those plate appearance results. And then we're going to go to the zones. So I said on pitches in the zone. So you could do it by clicking each of these, but there's a nice little button that does pitches in the zone. And if you go to it, it has selected 1 through 9, which is in the zone. And come here. Again, we want pitches because it's going to search for these criteria. So it's only going to give us a pitch if this happened on it. So this isn't going to give us the second pitch of that at bat or the first pitch of that at bat or anything else. It's only going to give us that decisive pitch. We're going to search. And we'll see. Yep, that's who I thought the answer would be. It's Garrett Cole. So Garrett Cole had 182 strikeouts last year on in-zone pitches. And next most was Justin Verlander with 145. We have Darvish, we have Giolito. Good list. Obviously, these are going to be guys who had a lot of strikeouts, but just a fun way to look at it. Another one we could do with this is if we clear this out, we do out-of-zone pitches. We'll see what the answer is there. Again, it's going to tend towards high strikeout guys for obvious reasons because we're doing a counting stat, but just a curiosity and who knows. And it's Patrick Corbin, Steven Strasburg, Shane Bieber. So guys getting a little craftier maybe. Corbin with all of his slider strikeouts. And there's your answer. So that's another fun one to do. You can go through this put away rate one, I think. Just trying to determine if we have enough time, but I'm going to keep going. So put away rate is a fun stat that I know I spent some time pushing for us to use more we got it onto Savant player pages and use it more with our various StatCast notes at MLB.com. It's essentially just another way to evaluate how good a strikeout pitch is for a pitcher. So put away rate essentially is just telling you how frequently when a pitcher gets to 2 strikes, they get the strikeout. So it's literally just 2 strike pitches divided by, strikeouts divided by 2 strike pitches. So we're going to do on a specific pitch type. So obviously this is only going to be looking at 2 strike curveballs. So we're going to start a new, so this question is, which pitcher had the best put away rate on curveballs in 2019? I wrote out the minimum now, but we would have figured it out if we needed to. Minimum of 100 2 strike curveballs. So if we go to a new search page, we're going to go over here. And with curveball, we're going to have another thing kind of like the strikeouts. So with curveball, sometimes it gets tracked as a curveball and sometimes it's a knuckle curve. For the purposes of any curveball notes, we're just going to select both of those. So we selected curveball and knuckle curve. We want our plate appearance result to be strikeout. And we want the count to be 2 strikes because we are only looking at those 2 strike curveballs. So how many 2 strike curveballs result in a strikeout? That is the question. So we're going to come over here. And I said over here that our minimum would be 100 2 strike curves. So in order to do that, we have to use another of these buttons down here. So this change total pitch parameters is probably the most powerful thing in terms of how the search works. So the other searches we didn't require very specific minimums, which is why we didn't get to it before. What this is going to do is it's going to affect what the denominator is. So it's going to take out anything you don't need. So essentially, go back to the fact that I said this is 2 strike curveballs to result in a strikeout. So what we don't need there are fastballs, 1 strike curveballs, first pitch curveballs, or anything else like that. So if we come over here and select pitch types, that will make it so that the total pitches, the denominator of the equation, is only going to include whatever we selected over here, which is curveballs. Then if we do the same for count, it's only going to include our 2 strike curveballs. So it's important because we don't want any other pitches. We just want any pitch that is a curveball thrown with 2 strikes. So if we do that, and then I'm always going to, if I'm in here, I'll always select the tracked pitch. That just means that we're not getting any, filler data that's there from games that weren't in StatCast Parks. Come over here. Okay. So the next thing we need is that a put away rate is a rate. It's a percentage. So obviously we don't want to sort by total pitches. If we come over here and we go to pitch percentage, that's what we want. But there's one more thing we have to do. So over here, we set the terms of what our denominator is going to be, the terms of what our minimum is. But we actually have to set that minimum also. This is where that comes in. So we'll click 100 pitches. So you'll see this says minimum number of total pitches, and this is total pitch parameters. That's related. So this is the parameters for what this is. So we have player name, that's right. Strikeouts on curveballs, 2 strikes so that we get our put away rate, and we will search it. And the answer is, okay, our minimum was 100. So Ryan Presley just barely made it, but excuse me, throwing 100 2 strike curveballs. But if we wanted to say more than, we would have Tyler Glasnow, which lines up with everything we know about his curveball. So that's a little more complicated, but that's another, just another way you can use this. And, I would implore anybody who is interested in any of this, certainly always feel free to tweet questions at me. I'll help you with them. We've definitely gotten people, even just this offseason alone, tweeting, hey, how do I do this? Not just what's the answer. Always happy to walk people through that kind of stuff. And yeah, there's just so much, even just on these 2 sites alone. And I didn't even cover Fangraphs or any other site that has, we didn't even really go over Baseball Reference player pages. So yeah, I hope that was helpful for everybody. And I hope that, you're interested and can answer your own trivia questions from your friends and family and everybody. So thank you.
All right, Sarah, that was awesome. That was so great. I don't think there was another presentation that had as many people saying, is this going to be on YouTube later? Because everyone wants to take notes. Like that was so great. I found myself being like, oh man, I've never known about this. I personally don't use a ton of Baseball Reference. I don't do a lot of historical stuff. So I learned a ton of that. That's awesome.
Awesome.
So anyway, so everyone listening right now, please leave your questions right now. We have Sarah for a little bit longer. So of course, please leave them now. I'll definitely, we'll go over it here. A question I have for you, just kind of separate from this stuff a little bit. What was your first experience getting into it? Because it's not just like one day and you know all of this. Do you remember like your first research task? Like, okay, you know what? I feel capable now. I think I can do this.
Yeah, so I sort of got to research. I don't know. I guess everyone gets to things in different ways. I first started sort of doing baseball research for any sort of job or internship when I was working for SNY in the summer of 2014. And it was kind of just because, excuse me, because nobody else was answering those questions. So I tried to, but I didn't have a Play Index subscription or anything like that. And then when I started at ESPN, where I worked before MLB, I remember that the first thing, the way that they do training in the ESPN Stats Info department, the way they teach you reference is basically through Baseball Reference, because Baseball Reference has the most stuff on it of any reference site. And that was great for me because I was starting in July and I was like, great, we're in the middle of baseball season. I want to know all of this. And I just remember clicking through everything and seeing, oh, that's how I can see a season. That's how I can see a game. That's how I can see an event. I can see every home run that Mike Piazza hit in his career or every home run that Willie Mays hit. Right. And I'm not sure there was one specific moment, but it's just kind of like I saw everything that was available and I was so excited to learn how to use it all.
It's kind of like Neo in the Matrix. All of a sudden you see the possibilities, you see all the things you can do, and it's just, oh my God, this rabbit hole is ridiculous. Hey, by the way, everyone asking, of course, Sarah Lang, give her a follow on Twitter at Sarah Slang Sports. I'm actually a little surprised as well. Of course, when we did the podcast before, we actually didn't have video, so I still believed you were that cartoon figure. And it's good to know that that you are human after all. Where is that from, by the way? How was that made?
So that was, I'm trying to remember what year. I think that was in 2018. So on Buster Olney's podcast, Baseball Night podcast, I've been going on there since 2017, like at least once a week during the season, chatting with Buster. We do the numbers game, which is fun. That's what my segment is called. And I think for 2018, for just a promotional thing for the podcast, they put together this really cool cartoon with everybody who went regularly on the show in it. And I was there with like a calculator or something. And it was fun. And the moment it went up and the producer at the time sent it to us, I was like, oh my gosh, this is definitely like my profile picture. So I don't even remember what it was before. So,
that's awesome. Yeah. I completely butchered your Twitter, by the way. It's Slangs on Sports.
Yes.
Oh my Lord. I am so sorry.
All good.
So there you go. Slangs on Sports. Definitely 100% give it a follow. We have a question here. Are you working on anything currently? Do you have any pieces that we should be looking forward to?
I'm always looking to answer people's questions. I tweeted out to get a bunch of research questions like a couple weeks ago, maybe 2 weeks ago. And I'm thinking I might do another research inbox with that, which I haven't done in a while. But right now, really preparing for the draft, learning a lot about some of these draft prospects and not even specifically Baseball Reference or Savant type stuff about them, but just, sort of their background so we can be ready.
Oh, man, I do feel in so many ways that obviously like the tools that we have now is just not even close to what we used to have for major leagues, but it's only a matter of time before it starts going, more so into the minors, because we do actually have some minor league numbers, and then it's going to go to college, and then it's going to go to high school. It's just going to continue to go. And then, of course, then it's going to be my T-ball league when I was 6 years old. It's like, well, I look at the exit velocity on that, that kid's got promise. But anyway, so I guess a couple more questions that I have here. When it comes to all this stuff, you've found so many stats over the years and so many things. Is there one that's just like, okay, that is by far my favorite stat?
Oh my gosh. It's like, I feel like this is when people say like they can't choose between their children, right? Sure. That's sort of how I feel. But one that stands out to me, and I might have said this if we talked about it on the podcast actually, is that last year in May, there was this game where Pablo Sandoval ended up pitching. It was the second time he'd ever pitched. He pitched in 2018 also. There's a Let Pablo Pitch bobblehead that I actually am looking at over there. And so he pitched. It was a game in Cincinnati. It was a day game. And he had already homered in the game, and he'd actually stolen his first base in 3 or 4 years. It was borderline defensive indifference type thing, but he did steal the base. Sure. It counted. And then he came in and he pitched, I guess, the bottom of the 8th. And nobody got on base. Nobody scored. No, so he did hit someone with a pitch, but nobody scored. So we had a scoreless pitching appearance. And I was going through stuff, and there was a fun note about Giants pitchers with no ERA, because I don't think he allowed any runs in his other appearance, whatever. Sure. I started looking at more. I'm like, scoreless pitching of performance, stolen base, and a home run. that sounds fun. So I called up Elias. That's not something that we can all put together and do on reference. Part of it, but not all of it. And I called up Elias, and the answer ended up being that he was, I think, the second player in the modern era to have a scoreless pitching performance, home run, and stolen base in the same game. And the other one was Christy Mathewson in like 1905, somewhere around there, also against the Reds, also in May, which was really fun. But, you know, Christy Mathewson threw a shutout and Pablo Sandoval threw one scoreless inning. So, you know, grain of salt, but I thought that was just so cool. And like That's the fact that that just hadn't happened with all the position player pitching we get these days and everything else. I mean, you know, homering in the game and then coming into pitch isn't like the most infrequent thing in the world. It happened. But the stolen base too, and Pablo Sandoval with the stolen base. I mean, I thought that was a lot of fun.
Oh, that's fantastic. I mean, obviously we have like the Clayton Kershaw game where he essentially threw a shutout and then hit a home run on opening day. Or maybe it wasn't opening day, but it was like within that week. We had that one WAR in itself because he won that game.
That's a really good point. There was a Syndergaard game last year where he had a shutout and the only run of the game was a solo home run that he hit. That was on May 2nd last year.
That's probably half of his WAR the entire year. I'm just kidding. So we have some more questions here. So what fantasy baseball games do you play?
Okay. So I have helped a friend with fantasy baseball in the past. One of my best friends from college, JT, he was in law school and they were doing a fantasy baseball league. And he asked like, hey, you work at ESPN, you know sports, like, can you help me? And so we had the Muffin 9, which we named after like something that we came up in an old baseball history class we took in college. We still refer to some players as like, you know, Muffin greats, Giancarlo Stanton, also Cesar Hernandez come to mind right now. But I'm not sure that I've ever actually had my own team. Maybe I did. I think I started a Baseball Tonight League one year, but I think only like 2 people were. I'm not great with fantasy sports.
Wait, do you know who was in that league?
Oh, no. It was like production.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Sorry. Okay. But no, my fantasy sports claim to fame is in fantasy football because I won my league one year with the Token Girl team. So.
All right. Okay.
Team name.
So we have another one. This one's from Yancey Eden. Aside from the obvious ones of Trout and Bonds, who is a player, past or present, that is just a gold mine for stats?
I mean, I feel like Greg Maddux is a lot of fun. You know, I mean, obviously everyone talks about the Maddux, and technically pitch tracking stuff doesn't go back his entire career. So you don't have every single start that he's made and have the pitch counts, but so we don't technically know how many Madduxes there have been, but I feel like that's a really fun one. And honestly, Randy Johnson, I mean, anyone like that, any of the big kind of really power pitchers like Randy Johnson, I feel like they're always coming up on any strikeouts list, anything like that. I mean, I could do like a 5-hour presentation on like stats about Max Scherzer. You know, I feel like it's all the great players, but definitely Trout and Bonds for sure are on their own level too.
Definitely. Yeah. With Randy Johnson, I mean, I think he was like 30 is when he started being good, like really actually becoming a thing, which is nuts when you think about that.
Yes.
I mean, we have all these pitchers. They're still 23, 24, and they've been in the league for years already. Felix Hernandez, actually, that's when he started being bad, unfortunately. That was when he turned 30. So hopefully Madison Bumgarner does not become terrible as he enters his 30s. Okay, so what college offers a baseball history class? Why didn't I attend said college? Says who should not be.
So I went to the University of Chicago, and it wasn't just a baseball history class. I sort of said that quickly because it's a longer title name, course name, whatever. But it was called Baseball and American History, 1840s to Present, taught by this professor named Matthew Briones, big Red Sox fan. First day, like, had us all say who we rooted for or like favorite baseball moment. But, you know, University of Chicago is not the most sports inclined school in the world. We did have the first Heisman Trophy winner. We did help found the Big Ten. Amos Alonzo Stagg did coach there, but yeah, you know, D3 sports now, not quite as much. So finding out that there was a course my freshman year that had baseball in the title, I was like, okay, I'm taking it. You know, that's easy. And it was great. It was so much fun. We read really great books, and, you know, it was not just baseball history, but it was really tracing the history of the United States and the ways that baseball is interwoven throughout all of that. You know, Jackie Robinson before the military, all these other kinds of things. So really, really fun.
Awesome. So who was your most influential person in sports for you on your path to your career?
Oh my goodness. No one's ever asked me that. So I don't have like an immediate answer, but I grew up just watching so many games, watching ESPN, watching those broadcasters. I mean, just hearing all that they have to say and hearing how informed they are. I think that that's all really something that, I strive towards in whatever it is that I'm doing. I'm not sure that there's, one specific person. I think that if I were younger, I would probably say Jess Mendoza, because so much of what she does is what I would love to do someday. And, she's such a great role model and does such a great job in an arena that doesn't really have a lot of women doing that. But I'm not young enough to say that because I got started in this before that.
Well, maybe one day. I mean, that would be, I don't know. I do wonder if broadcasting in general is going to have a wider scope moving forward. I mean, right now with baseball, it's obviously you have your national broadcast, say like Fox or ESPN, but then you only have really 2 people or 3 per team, and that's it. You kind of locked into that. And I do wonder if over the years, obviously Sinclair Media purchasing the rights last year really is not helpful for this, but nevertheless, it does seem in some way as we age, there are going to be more opportunities for more people to broadcast.
Yeah, kind of like we haven't seen exactly how it'll play out yet, but I remember the Orioles when they signed. I guess it is kind of signed. Sure. when they hired Melanie Newman. It wasn't even specifically said exactly what she'll be doing, at least from the get-go. And I remember thinking that was really interesting because we've seen some broadcasts like the Giants, for instance, the guys on CSN or NBC Sports Bay Area and KNBR kind of go between the booths. And it sort of seemed like the Orioles might be tending towards something like that with even more people involved. It would be really cool to see more teams do that and just have more crossover, even just between radio and TV, because that already doubles, the number of people involved.
Exactly. Oh, that would be so great. We'd love to see it also on broadcast. That'd be fantastic. Now, so another question here. We only have a few more questions, of course. So Pullhitter 43 asks, I enjoyed your Tracing the Trade Tree article on Gleyber Torres. Will there be more like that?
There are definitely a bunch more like that on MLB.com. I know that Anthony DiComo wrote one about getting David Wright to the Mets. We know that was the comp pick for Mike Hampton leaving for the school district in Colorado. But there's a lot more to that because they got Hampton in a trade. So I know that there was that one, and I can't remember. I think that there was a Piazza to the Dodgers, how he got drafted, like what led to something like that. There was a Dodger one. I'm sorry, I'm not remembering exactly, but we've been doing a handful of those and definitely always taking suggestions. It's really fun to just go to Baseball Reference and click through and, find a guy who got to his current team via trade and see where that goes back. I mean, that's how I ended up finding, everyone knows the Chapman part of Gleyber Torres, but I ended up clicking prior to that and finding that it started, with Manny Banuelos, which I don't think anyone would have necessarily known off the top of their head. So.
Right, definitely. And last question, of course, on the same topic of your article history. What has been your favorite article that you've written?
Ooh, favorite article that I've written. I'm not 100% sure, so I'm going to give a recent answer again. But I wrote about position players pitching like in the last 3 weeks or so, and it was really fun. It's just really fun to look back at. Like I looked at guys who had the most strikeouts without allowing a run in a position player pitching appearance. I think the answer to that one was like, oh my gosh, was it I'm not going to get it right, so I'm not going to say it. But it involved striking out like a bunch of the 79 Pirates, which was really cool.
Oh, really? That's awesome.
That was fun. That. And just like a lot of fun video, like LaRoche doing the lob, for his dad. And some things beyond just the stuff we remember super recently of, Stevie Wilkerson, the closer.
Sure.
And everything else. And so that was a lot of fun for me. It's always just fun to like go back and look at a lot of different instances of something, sometimes Definitely. Just like coming up with a list like that. I don't remember this game, or, this game was in 1969. Of course I don't remember it. And learning more about like the situation at the time and all of that.
Yeah, it's really fun when you dive into all of this and all of a sudden there's a game in 2017 that you remember actually where you were when you watched it.
Yep.
The whole context of it, like, oh, right, that thing, of course.
Yeah.
But on the topic of position players pitching, I mean, I don't know if you saw the Phillies put out a whole video about.
Oh my gosh, it was amazing.
It was so good.
So
I love that. And I honestly, I got a little upset at one moment because I saw Scott Kingery pitch. And I got to say, position players pitching, it's great when they try to pitch. And Kingery was like, nah, I'm good. And he like lobs every pitch in. I'm like, no, man, I want to see Chris Davis pitch. I want to see that again. Where he strikes out Ortiz with like a changeup. I want to see you fully try, not this like a dad throwing to his son almost. I don't want that.
But they did have the Wilson Valdez appearance,
Oh,
which
yeah.
was on my list, where he got, I think, like Votto and Jay Bruce. I mean, he had to face some tough Reds players back in, like, I want to say it was like 2012-ish, and he did great. So
yeah, that was such a joy. But anyway, Sarah, it's incredible. Thank you so much for joining us with PitchCon, guys. Sarah Langs, give her a follow at Slings on Sports. Got that right, definitely. Thank you so much for this, and really thanks again for being part of PitchCon.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a lot of fun. I hope people enjoyed learning about searching stuff. So yeah,
without a doubt. Thanks again.